The city was a mirror that night. Glass upon glass, light upon light, everything reflected something except truth. I stood at the head of the conference table, pen poised above a document that bore my name in bold, serif type. Clara Hayes, lead architect. The skyline of Manhattan gleamed beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows, an orchestra of cranes, girders, and ambition. Somewhere far below, a taxi horn blared, faint as memory. My hand didn't move. Clara asked someone, polite, corporate, Thomas Reed, our firm's legal counsel. His voice had that professional neutrality that existed precisely to hide discomfort. I looked down again. The papers shimmered slightly under the recessed lighting. I'd memorized every clause of this contract during the 3 months we'd negotiated with the investors. Every line about intellectual property, profit distribution, creative control. But this version, this one had been rewritten. 2 words had changed everything. Instead of Hayes Architecture and Design retains full authorship, it read, Hayes Development Group assumes authorship rights in partnership with Hayes Architecture and Design. Hayes Development Group, my brother's company. I felt it like a muscle tightening around my ribs. Who approved this revision? I asked quietly. Thomas hesitated, shifting his weight. It came from your family's office, Clara. Your brother said it was just a clarification for tax purposes. The board signed off this morning. A laugh rose in my throat but didn't make it out. Of course they did. Daniel always had a way of turning clarifications into control. I set the pen down slowly, deliberately. The gold tip touched the table and rolled until it stopped beside the edge of the folder. The room held its breath. Outside, the reflection of the skyline fractured into streaks of gold and blue against the window. I could see myself there, a woman in black, hair pinned tight, face unreadable, a ghost among towers. Clara, this deal's too valuable to delay, Thomas added. The investors fly back to Dubai tomorrow. Your brother's been clear about how? I cut him off with a glance. My brother doesn't speak for me. The sentence felt heavier than it should have. Like it had been waiting years to be said. He looked startled, as if I'd broken some unspoken rule of family hierarchy. In a way, I turned to the final page again. My signature already appeared there, clean, confident, utterly false. They'd forged it. The realization was quiet, surgical. Like a scalpel under the ribs. 100 memories came flooding in, Daniel teaching me how to draw blueprints on napkins when I was 10. Our father saying, "You'll never make it in that world, sweetheart." Too emotional. The last Christmas we spent together, when they'd toasted to Hayes' legacy and I'd smiled like a good daughter, pretending it included me. My phone vibrated on the table. A message from my mother. So proud of you tonight. Don't make things difficult for Daniel. He's under enough pressure. A perfect echo of my childhood. Pride with a warning label. I turned the phone face down. Thomas, I said, voice steady, how long have these documents been in circulation? He exhaled, caught between guilt and fear. 2 weeks. 2 weeks. 2 weeks of stolen authorship, my firm's name leveraged as collateral, my design passed around like a family heirloom. I'll need all internal correspondence related to this contract, I said. Emails, memos, revisions, timestamps, everything. He blinked. Clara, are you sure you want to everything, I repeated. There was something new in my tone, something even I hadn't heard before. It wasn't anger. It was precision. He nodded, wordless, and left the room. I stood there alone with the city pressing against the glass, a woman suspended between the skyline she'd built and the family trying to erase her from it. My reflection looked back at me. Steady, calculating, alive. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like an architect building their world. I felt like a demolitionist. The phone buzzed again. This time from Daniel. Don't make a scene, Clara. You'll regret it. I picked up the pen and signed nothing. The next morning, the city was still half asleep, gray and shivering in the thin dawn mist. The kind of light that made even the tallest skyscrapers look vulnerable. I hadn't gone home. My office was still lit from the night before, cold fluorescent glow spilling onto polished concrete. The coffee in my mug had gone stale hours ago, but I kept sipping it anyway, as if bitterness could keep me awake. The documents were spread across the desk like a crime scene. Because that's what it was. Really, a quiet, elegant theft executed with perfect timing and family precision. My signature replicated, curved just enough to pass scrutiny. My design, the Ecliptica Tower, the project I'd dreamed of since grad school, now claimed by Hayes Development Group. They hadn't just taken credit, they'd taken identity. By the time the sun began cutting through the fog outside, I'd read every version of the contract. Each one a timeline of betrayal, small edits buried deep within the legal jargon. All approved electronically while I was in Chicago for the conference. I'd been out of the city, out of the conversation, out of control. Jesus, came a quiet voice behind me. I didn't have to turn to know it was Mark, my lead designer, the only person who'd seen me cry in the last 5 years. He leaned on the doorframe, hair messy, tie loosened, holding 2 cups of coffee. "You've been here all night?" I couldn't sleep. He handed me a cup. Figured. For a moment, we just stood there, the city waking up around us. Car horns echoing from below, elevator hum from the lobby, paper rustling in the air vents. Finally, I said, they used my name. Mark. My brother's company signed a contract worth $80 million using my firm's designs and my forged signature. He whistled softly. That's next level? Family loyalty, I said dryly. Mark studied me for a moment. You're going to go after them, right? I didn't answer right away. My eyes stayed fixed on the model of Ecliptica, the twisting glass tower in miniature form that stood in the center of the table. Its base reflected the morning light like a blade. Going after them sounds emotional, I said finally. I prefer strategic. He smiled a little. There's the Clara I know. The truth was, I'd always been the calm one. The rationale one. The daughter who didn't scream. The architect who didn't improvise. The boss who didn't panic. But somewhere inside that calm, something sharp had started to grow. I opened my laptop and began drafting an email, not to my brother, not to my parents, but to the legal team of the international investors. Every word was measured, clinical, lethal, to whom it may concern. It has come to my attention that documents signed under my name were submitted to finalize the Ecliptica Tower agreement. I was not present at any point of signature authorization. Please consider this a formal request for full audit of all communication, documentation, and transaction chains associated with Hayes Development Group. Effective immediately, Hayes Architecture and Design withdraws all creative rights until verification is completed. Respectfully, Clara Hayes. I hit send. And for the first time in months, I felt like I was breathing. Mark watched me, then said quietly, "That's going to start a war." I shook my head. No, it's going to end one they started years ago. By noon, the phone wouldn't stop ringing. First came the investors, polite but alarmed. Then, predictably, Daniel let all of them go to voicemail. The last time I'd heard that tone in his voice, urgent but condescending, was when we were kids and he'd borrowed my savings for college stuff. It had taken me 3 years to realize he'd used it to buy his first car. I remembered our father's reaction back then. He's just trying to find his way. You're stronger, Clara. You'll understand someday. Apparently, someday was now. By mid-afternoon, my assistant, Tessa, appeared in the doorway with a hesitant knock. Clara, there's someone here to see you. I looked up. If it's Daniel, tell him to leave. She bit her lip. It's your mother. That stopped me. For a moment, I couldn't decide if I was angry, exhausted, or just sad. Maybe all of it. Send her in, I said finally. My mother entered like she always did, as if she still owned the air around her. Pearl earrings, immaculate posture, a perfume that smelled like power disguised as grace. "Clara, what are you doing?" she said, voice low and sharp. "Do you realize what kind of damage this could cause?" "Clarifying ownership," I replied. "You're humiliating your brother. He's worked so hard." I laughed once, quiet, bitter. "He's worked hard at taking things that aren't his." Her expression didn't waver. "Family business is complicated. Sometimes you have to bend a few rules to protect the legacy." I turned to her fully then. "Whose legacy, mother? Because every time you say ours, what you really mean is his." The silence that followed felt like glass cracking under pressure. Her lips pressed together. "Don't make this personal." "It is personal," I said, my voice steady but cold. "You forged my name?" She blinked. For the first time, I saw something like uncertainty cross her face. "Clara, that wasn't me." "Then who had access to my signature files?" She didn't answer. She didn't need to. I stepped closer, my reflection overlapping hers in the glass wall. Two women bound by blood but divided by silence. "This isn't about family anymore," I said. "It's about integrity." Her hand tightened around her purse strap. "You'll regret this." "No," I said softly. "I already regret staying quiet this long." When she left, the office felt impossibly still, the kind of stillness that follows earthquakes. I looked again at the model of Ecliptica on the table, its twisting structure catching the afternoon light, unbroken, unapologetic. Mark stepped in quietly. "That went about as well as expected." I nodded. "Better, actually." "What?" Nana, I said. "We audit every file, every cent, every signature. And when it's done, they'll finally see what I've built and what they destroyed." Mark gave a small, grim smile. "You know, this isn't just business anymore, right?" I looked out at the skyline, the glass towers gleaming like mirrors of ambition and deceit. "I know," I said. "That's why I'll win." By Monday morning, the city was a machine again. The skyline cut against a blue so sharp it looked unreal, like someone had overexposed the day. Inside my office, the hum of servers and the faint scent of burnt coffee blended into the rhythm of determination. Every surface was covered contracts, blueprints, USB drives, labeled in my handwriting. Evidence of trust misplaced. Tessa, my assistant, sat across from me, scrolling through archives faster than I could read them. Her usual calm was replaced by quiet fury. "They didn't even try to hide it," she muttered. "Same CAD metadata, same timestamps, same everything. They just renamed the files." I looked up. "Who authorized the transfers?" She hesitated. "You're not going to like this. Say it's your mother's assistant. Using your account. It started 3 months ago." I leaned back, the air in the room suddenly thinner. "That's when she started asking me to share progress updates for family review." "Family review," Mark echoed from his desk. "That's a hell of a euphemism for corporate theft." I closed my eyes for a moment, the weight of it all pressing against the back of my skull. They hadn't just underestimated me, they'd erased me. By noon, my legal team was in a glass conference room overlooking the skyline, 5 people who looked like they'd stepped out of a Wall Street thriller. Sharp suits, sharper eyes. One of them, a woman named Alexandra Pierce, was the kind of lawyer you didn't hire unless you were prepared to burn bridges or entire families. She studied the stack of files I'd placed in front of her, then met my eyes. "You have enough here for a federal case." I nodded. "I'm not sure I want that." Alexandra raised an eyebrow. "You're not sure?" "I don't want revenge," I said. "I want acknowledgement. I want the record corrected. My work, my name, my rights." She leaned back, assessing me. "Most people would want blood. Most people didn't grow up with mine," I replied. Her smile was brief, almost approving. "Then let's make this surgical. No headlines, no scandal, just quiet precision. You get your ownership back and they lose credibility." "Perfect," I said. She gathered her notes. You understand this will destroy their business standing, right? Investors don't tolerate fraud. I stared out the window, watching the light glint off the distant Hudson. They destroyed their standing the moment they forged my name. I'm just turning on the lights. 2 days later, the audit began. It started quietly, a request here, a discrepancy there, but by the end of the week, every corner of Hayes Development was under scrutiny. Emails flagged, calls recorded, bank accounts frozen, pending review. Daniel called again. 12 times. Then he showed up. Tessa intercepted him in the lobby, but he forced his way past. The glass door slammed open. Clara, we need to talk, he said, voice tight. I didn't look up from the plans on my desk. You're not supposed to be here. He paced like a man rehearsing anger. You had no right to go public with this audit. I didn't go public, I said calmly. I went procedural. You're tanking our investors. Clara, do you even realize what you've done? Our investors? I repeated slowly. Funny choice of words, considering my name wasn't even on the documents. He froze. It was a mistake. No, I interrupted. It was a pattern. The silence stretched for the first time. I saw the edge of panic behind his arrogance, that flicker of a man who'd finally realized the game wasn't rigged in his favor anymore. You don't understand, he said finally. Mom was trying to protect you, I finished for him. Yeah, I've heard that one before. He took a step closer. We're family. Clara, you're really going to destroy everything over this? I looked up at him then, really looked. The boy who used to borrow my notes, my savings, my trust. The man who now stood in my office wearing guilt like cologne. I'm not destroying anything, I said quietly. I'm rebuilding it without you. He swallowed hard, anger and shame warring in his face. You'll regret this. Maybe, I said, but at least the regret will be mine. He stared at me a moment longer, then left. The echo of his footsteps faded down the hallway like the end of an era. That night, I stayed late again. The office lights dimmed automatically at midnight, leaving me in a half-dark that felt almost sacred. Outside, New York glittered cold and infinite. I walked over to the model of Ecliptica, tracing my fingers along its spiral. It stood taller than any building I'd ever designed, a symbol of movement, of light, of impossible balance. When I'd first conceived it, I'd wanted it to represent connection, the way lines of architecture could mirror human relationships, each tension point supporting another. Now it felt like irony in glass. The phone buzzed once. A message from Alexandra. Audit nearly complete. Findings in your favor. Recommendation. Immediate public clarification before media leaks it first. I typed back, schedule the press briefing for Friday. I'll handle it. For the first time in weeks, I smiled, small, weary, real. They thought they'd silenced me by stealing my voice. But they forgot I built the stage they're standing on. Friday arrived with a deceptive calm, that kind of stillness before a thunderstorm, where the city feels like it's holding its breath. From the 42nd floor of the Helios Tower, I could see the reflection of Ecliptica's construction site shimmering in the distance. Steel bones against morning light, my design, my name, my proof. The conference room was already full when I walked in. Cameras, lights, microphones, a crowd that smelled faintly of caffeine, ambition, and curiosity. Tessa stood by the door, giving me a steady look that said everything words couldn't. You're ready, she whispered. I've been ready for 10 years, I said. At the far end of the room sat my family. My father, composed, distant, calculating. My mother, immaculate, but her fingers twisted the edge of a handkerchief. And Daniel, restless, defiant, like a man who still believed the world could be talked into forgetting. I took my place behind the podium. Good morning, I began. My voice carried cleanly across the room. Thank you for coming. Flashes went off. The air buzzed, As most of you know, I continued Hayes development and I have collaborated for over a decade on major architectural projects. Recently, questions arose regarding authorship and financial control of my latest design, Ecliptic. I paused, letting the silence stretch. After a full independent audit, I can confirm the project remains under my sole ownership. Documentation of unauthorized transfers has been turned over to legal authorities. A murmur rippled through the crowd, pens scribbling, cameras clicking faster. Behind me, I could feel my father's stare, hot and precise. He hated exposure more than anything. A reporter raised a hand. "Ms. Hayes, are you suggesting your own family committed fraud?" I looked at him directly. "I'm suggesting that trust, when taken for granted, becomes a weapon, and that silence protects no one." There it was, the headline moment. The truth without vengeance. My father stood abruptly. "Clara, this isn't the time." I turned to face him fully. "It's exactly the time." The cameras swung toward him, the room suddenly electric. He tried to speak again, but I didn't let him. "You once told me business was about legacy. That emotion had no place in it. You were right. So this isn't emotional, it's factual. My name, my work, my future." He froze, his jaw tightening. My mother reached for his arm, whispering something that didn't reach me. I turned back to the press. This project began as a family vision. It's ending as a personal one. Ecliptica will continue transparently, independently, and without compromise. Applause started hesitant at first, then building. I nodded once, stepped away from the podium, and walked out. The flashbulbs followed me down the corridor like fading lightning. In the elevator, silence returned. Just the hum of descent, soft and endless. When the doors opened, Tessa was waiting with a faint smile. "You didn't just win," she said. "You reclaimed the narrative." I exhaled slowly. For once, it feels like enough. We stepped outside into the chill of late afternoon. Across the street, construction cranes carved lines into the gray sky. Ecliptica rose higher each day, stubborn, graceful, inevitable. That evening, I received a call from an unknown number. "Clara." It was my mother's voice, softer than I remembered. "I wasn't sure you'd answer," she said. "I wasn't sure you'd call." A long pause. "Your father's furious. Daniel's gone to Boston to meet investors." "I wish him luck," I said simply. She hesitated. "You embarrassed us today." I smiled faintly. I told the truth. Another pause, longer this time. When she spoke again, her voice cracked. "You sound just like your father used to, before he forgot who he was." That one hit deeper than I expected. "I hope he remembers someday," I said softly. "But I can't wait for that." "Clara," she whispered, "you've always been too strong for your own good." "No," I said, my throat tight but steady. "I've just been too silent for yours." I ended the call before she could reply. Later that night, I stood alone on the terrace of my apartment. The city stretched beneath me, alive, indifferent, magnificent. In the reflection of the glass door, I caught my own image. The woman they underestimated. The architect who'd rebuilt herself piece by piece. My phone buzzed again, a message from Alexandra. "Audit closed. Media response overwhelmingly in your favor. Congratulations," I typed back. Not victory. Just clarity. Below, headlights streamed like veins of light across the city. For the first time in years, I felt no need to prove anything. They had my blood, my history, my last name. But what I built, they could never take that again. Morning sunlight poured through the floor-to-ceiling windows of my apartment, touching everything with quiet gold. The city outside was already alive, honking, humming, breathing, but I felt still. Still, for the first time in years. I brewed coffee and watched the steam rise, curling like a question in the air. The silence didn't feel empty anymore. It felt earned. After the press conference, my life had become a blur of calls, statements, and apologies, some genuine, some rehearsed. My father's lawyers had settled quickly. My mother had stopped calling. Daniel had posted something vague on LinkedIn about new horizons. But none of that mattered now. What mattered was the space that remained. The space to rebuild on my terms. By late morning, I was standing inside an old warehouse in Brooklyn, the kind with brick walls and sunlight that fell in broken squares through dusty windows. "This is it?" Tessa asked, walking beside me. "This is it," I said, my voice echoing softly. I had signed the lease the night before impulsively. Maybe. But it felt right. The plan was still taking shape in my head, a foundation for young architects. Especially women who were told they weren't ready, weren't strong enough, weren't him, no PR stunt. No brand play, just something real. I imagined workbenches, models, blueprints spread like maps of possibility. The smell of wood and ink. The sound of creation replacing the noise of competition. "Does it have a name yet?" Tessa asked, brushing dust off a beam. "Not yet," I said. "Names should come last. After meaning." She smiled. "You've changed, you know?" "Have I?" "Yes," she said. "You're not fighting anymore." I thought about that for a moment. "No," I said. "I'm building again." That afternoon, I met Alexandra in the cafe where we used to plan strategy meetings, all glass, marble, and quiet ambition. She slid a folder across the table. "Final audit documents. Everything's clean. Officially yours." I took the papers, though I didn't need to look. I trusted her. "You did more than you had to," I said. She shrugged. "You did, too. Just in a different way." We sat in silence for a while, the kind that doesn't demand conversation. "Finally," I asked, "do you think they'll ever understand?" "Your family?" I nodded. Alexandra stirred her coffee slowly. "Maybe not. But understanding isn't the same as peace." I smiled faintly. "You sound like a therapist." She smirked. "I moonlight as one for overachievers who build skylines to avoid feelings." I laughed genuinely this time. It felt strange and liberating. Weeks passed. The foundation began to take form. Walls painted, desks assembled, a name finally chosen: Arcadia. Not for the myth, but for the idea, a place untouched by corruption, where creation meant freedom. We opened quietly. No cameras, no sponsors. Just a handful of students, a few volunteers, and the soft sound of pencils sketching possibilities. One night, I stayed late, reviewing plans under dim light. A photo slipped out from between the papers, me, Daniel, and our father, at the groundbreaking of his last project. I almost threw it away. Instead, I placed it in a drawer. Not forgiveness, not nostalgia, just acknowledgement. Because healing, I realized, wasn't a line you crossed. It was a circle you learned to walk without breaking. The call came weeks later. "Clara Hayes." "Yes. This is the Metropolitan Arts Council. We'd like to nominate Ecliptica for the Civic Design Award." The story behind it resonated. I smiled, leaning back in my chair. "The story behind it," I repeated softly. That night, I stood once more at the tower's edge, overlooking the glowing veins of New York. The skyline no longer felt like a battlefield. It felt like home. In the reflection of the glass, I saw her, the woman I used to be. The one who fought for approval, mistook silence for strength. She looked at me one last time, then faded into the lights. And me? I just breathed. Not triumph. Not revenge. Peace. 2 years later, the foundation had grown beyond anything I'd imagined. Dozens of projects. Hundreds of students. Each blueprint, each idea, each voice, a quiet defiance against the world that once silenced mine. A journalist asked me recently, "What's your greatest accomplishment?" I told her the truth. Letting go. When I left the interview, the city was soft under rain. I walked without an umbrella, my hair plastered to my face, shoes soaked, but my chest light. They once took everything I thought made me powerful. And somehow, that's how I found the power they could never touch. I built a skyline for them once. Now, I build a world for me.